Once a family has been loaded into a project, you can place instances of the component into your model. Each instance has its own instance properties. For example, here you can see a table and 6 chairs. I know that on the MEP side, we do not have to deal with tables and chairs, but this is a simple example to see how we can edit families within a project. There are actually only 2 components in this model, the rectangular table and the brewer chair. But there are 6 separate instances of the chair. If I select one of the chairs, in the Properties palette, you can see its instance properties. There really aren't many instance properties associated with this component, but in the Identity Data area, there are parameters for comments and mark. I could assign each chair its own mark or chair number, if I wished. Similarly, if I select the table, I can see its instance properties in the Properties palette. If I click the Edit Type button, Revit displays the Type Properties dialog. Now I am looking at the type properties of the table. These properties are common to all tables of this type. I'll click Cancel to close that dialog. I'll select one of the chairs and open its Type Properties dialog. Again, I am looking at properties common to all of the brewer chairs. If I were to change any of the properties in the Type Properties dialog, all chairs of this type everywhere in this Revit project would change. For example, if I click in the Seat Back Material parameter field and then click this button, the Material Browser will open. Next, I will select the plastic material and click OK. Click OK to close the Type Properties dialog, and then you see that the chairs no longer have woven bamboo seats and backs, but rather appear to be made of a solid material. Because I changed the type properties, all of the chairs of that type have been changed. If I select the table, in the Properties palette, in the Type selector, I can see that I've selected a 72-inch by 30-inch table. Suppose I want a different size table. If I expand the Type selector, I can see that there are 2 other sizes. If I choose the 60-inch by 48-inch table, the table in the model immediately updates because I have changed it to a different type. What if the size I want is not available in the Type selector? Suppose I want a 72-inch by 48-inch table. In that case, I can create a new size by creating a new type of rectangular table. With the table selected, I'll click Edit Type to open the Type Properties dialog. In the Dimensions area, I can see the dimensions controlling the size of the table. Now I could simply change the dimensions, but since I'd be modifying the type properties, any other 60-inch by 48-inch tables already in the project would also change size. Therefore, we just need to create a new type so the existing instances are not altered. I'll click the Duplicate button. In the Name dialog, I'll type the new name 72-inch by 48-inch, and then click OK. I'll click in the Length parameter field, specify a new length value of 72 inches, and then click OK to close the Type Properties dialog. The table immediately updates. But now, when I expand the Type selector, notice that there are now 4 different sizes. The new size I created is now available as one of the types, and I could change the selected table back to the 72-inch by 30-inch table if I wished. The table in the model is just one instance of a specific type of table. The size is controlled by the type properties, and I can have many different sizes. But the actual geometry of the table is based on the table family. If I want to change something about the geometry, I would need to modify the table family. For example, suppose I wanted the table to have rounded corners. To do that, I would need to open the table in the Revit Family Editor. I'll select the table, choose Edit Family in the Mode panel of the contextual ribbon, and the family opens in the family editor. When I look in the title bar, I can see that I'm now editing the table-rectangular.rfa file. I'm currently looking at the table in 3D. To round the corners of the table, I need to edit the table top. I'll select the table top. Notice that the ribbon changes to the Modify Extrusion contextual ribbon. The tabletop is an extrusion. In the Mode panel, I'll click Edit Extrusion. Revit goes into sketch mode, and I can see that the tabletop is actually a rectangle that has been extruded. I can round the corners of the rectangle by applying a fillet. In the Draw panel, I'll click the Fillet Arc tool. On the Options bar, I'll select the Radius checkbox and set the radius value to 6 inches. Then I can fillet the corners of the rectangle by simply clicking on adjacent pairs of lines in each corner. Once I've done that, I'll click Finish Edit Mode, and the table now has rounded corners. I'll click anywhere in the drawing area to deselect the tabletop. Now that I've changed the table, I need to load the changes back into my project. In the ribbon, I'll click Load into Project. Revit displays a dialog informing me that the family I'm loading already exists, and asks me what to do. Since this is what I had intended, I can click either of the override options. I didn't change any parameter values, so either option will do the same thing. Notice that the table in my model now has rounded corners. However, if I select the table, go to the type selector and choose a different size, I can see that it too has rounded corners. Because I modified the actual definition of the table family component, any table in this project that is based on that family component will also now have the same rounded corners. I'll switch to the Level 1 Plan View and zoom in on the table. Notice that in Plan View, the table does not have rounded corners. An element in Revit can have different appearances in different views and even at different levels of detail. In the Quick Access toolbar, I'll use the Switch Windows tool to switch back to the table component in the Family Editor, which is still open. Although the table has rounded corners in the 3D view, if I expand the Views branch in the Family Editor browser and switch to the ground floor view, there's a rectangle. I'll select that rectangle, and then, in the contextual ribbon, I'll click Edit Boundary. Now I can apply fillets to the corners of that rectangle as well. Once I finish doing that, I'll click Finish Edit Mode and then click anywhere in the drawing area to deselect that object. Then I'll click Load into Project again to load the modified table component back into my project. When Revit warns me that the family already exists, I'll click Overwrite. Notice that now, in the project, if I switch to the Level 1 Floor Plan view, the table in that view also has rounded corners. I'll use the tool in the Quick Access toolbar to switch back to the Family Editor again. Now I've got two different views open in the Family Editor. It doesn't matter which one I choose. Now that I'm done editing the table component definition, I should close the Family Editor. I'll expand the application menu and choose Close. Revit displays a dialog asking if I want to save changes to the table-rectangular.rfa file. Stop and understand what is about to happen. Do not click Yes. This is very important. Up until now, the changes I've made were only applied to the copy of the table family that already existed in my Revit project file. Now, Revit wants to know if I also want to save those changes to the table family in the Revit component library, the actual .rfa file. You don't want to do this. But before you click No, Consider whether you will ever want to use another table like this with rounded corners in some other project. If you click No, the table model you changed will only exist in the current Revit project. If you do want to save your changes so that you can reuse the table with rounded corners in some other model, click Cancel. Then expand the application menu and choose Save As Family so that you can save the Modify table as a brand new Revit component. In the Save As dialog, navigate to the Tables folder under Furniture and give the file a new, unique name. I'll call mine Table-Rectangular-Rounded, and then click Save. Once I've done that, I'll expand the application menu again and choose Close. Now I'm back in my Revit project file. Let's do one more thing. I'll switch to the Insert ribbon and click the Load Family tool. I'll navigate to the Furniture folder, Tables, hold down Control, select the Table-Rectangular and the new family we just created, and click Open. Revit displays a dialog warning me that the family already exists. I'll click Overwrite. Notice that the table in my model changes. It once again has square corners. I'll switch to the default 3D view. The reason it has square corners again is because I reloaded the original definition of the table from Revit's family library. But I also loaded the new family. I'll select the table and then expand the type selector, and I see both the rectangular table and the rectangular table with rounded corners. I now have both families available. And notice that the additional type I created for the 72-inch by 48-inch table is also available for both families. If I select one of the tables with rounded corners, the table in my model changes.